You understand? People must see their representative in government serving their own interests. If that happens, then you have a government where the mechanisms of governance can be run easily. Coming to Kenya, the geopolitical situation of Kenya. Kenya is a country whose political dynamics is divided along culture and tradition. That's why even during the elections, you can see that different parties, are represented by the different colors, the yellows, the, different colors, as you can see. And politics in itself is based on certain aspects. The dynamics, the perplexities are based on few things. That is the rival opinions between the individuals, rival opinions, the different ones, the competing needs, the opposing interests. And if that happens, there must be a yardstick that measures whatsoever comes to play. That's why elections is very important. Now, coming to this main issue, the election here of Uhuru Kenyatta into office, I think there is no problem him being elected. Do you understand? Even though there were threats that Kenyans will be doing this at their own risk, but there's no risk in this because Uhuru Kenyatta is not a convict. He's just indicted. Do you understand? And indictment is one of the steps in a pre-trial situation. Do you understand? So indictment doesn't mean anything. In fact, the charges against Muthaura were dropped, and he is one of the high-profile Kenyans who was charged at the ICC. So that is not an issue here. The issue is that let him, as usual, and Kenyatta has been very supportive. He's been responding to his calls at the ICC, to express and to give his own view on how everything happens. And even the prosecutor of the ICC has commended Kenyatta for the stance he's taken so far towards the ICC. I think the international community needs to be very careful, very wary, in order not to meddle into the political affairs of the Kenyans, because Kenya is a sovereign state of its own. Its political dispensation should be left with Kenyans themselves. Of late, I think shortly before the elections, the British government said something, that the election of an indicted war criminal could put on Kenya. I think that wouldn't have any ramification on Kenya, because Uhuru as a person matters, of course, but doesn't matter that much. In international relations, dealings are done in two ways. You deal at personal level and you deal at policy level. At policy level, the state will be dealing, and Kenya is very strategically located in East Africa. In fact, it is the biggest economy in East Africa, helping the world in the fight against terror and things like that. So the international community, especially the West, cannot operate in the East of Africa devoid Kenya. Do you understand? So that's why, at all costs, they will have to deal with Kenya. So that will be at policy level. At personal level, you cannot deal with a country, without a head of state. And Kenya will more or less deal with the same people. And if, after all what they've been saying, you will realize that it could, to an extent, roughen the way or the relations between these two countries, between the West, some of these Western countries who were opposing to his standing as a presidential candidate, and Kenya. So I think our stand should be to support them as Africans, to support Kenyatta, and so that the trust and the confidence that the people of his country have in him, is realized. One thing I would like to stress here also, I think it is high time for Africa to also emulate, because good practices are emulated, the developed world, and in fact some of the development, because if you look at Asia, Balde, the media plays a very fundamental role in not only educating, but even taking part in politics. That's why the West standpoint, is easily noticed. They wrote to Kenya, some of these Western countries wrote to Kenya on the elections of Kenyatta without even mentioning the name of Uhuru Kenyatta, and all the Western medias, BBC, CNN, carried that. Imagine if there were, if there was an African media institution, like, if you go to Asia, you have the Al Jazeera. If you go to Europe, you have the BBC. If you go to America, you have the CNN. If Africa has something like that, the views of Africans could be pronounced. if we could know the standpoint, then the balance will be striking. Do you understand? But now, Africa doesn't have any established media institution that represents the interests of Africa. So the only media institutions we depend on information, most of the cases, are either those from Asia or the CNN and the BBC.
Well, let's now look at Uhuru's humble biography.
I want you all to understand that Nairobi is the heartbeat of this nation. And we're not going to stand by and watch ourselves lose it. Not because the people do not support a Jubilee government, but because the leaders cannot work together. And I want to be very clear on that basis. And what we expect, and that is why we are here, from each and every single one of you who seeks to vie for an elective post in this city, is that I want you to understand that Nairobi and Kenya is bigger than any one of you individually. And the least we expect from you in these remaining 2 days is for you to pull this city together and to ensure a Jubilee victory in the city. Hii mambo ya watu kusema ya kwamba mimi nilikuwa na rafiki ya kushinda ako na chama ingine, unda support ule mtu wa chama chako. Kama rafiki yako akatoka chama kingine, mtaongea baada ya uchaguzi. Mimi sasa nataka kuuliza women representative wa Jubilee naye asimame. Madam, we have supported you and we will continue to support you, but these are the people you're going to work with in this room. There is no other, and there shall be no other. Are we in agreement, madam? Are we in agreement? And we work together.
Many believe Uhuru simply wants to inherit his late father's seat. But growing up in the first family, is Uhuru a pampered prince seeking the country's presidency from a platform of entitlement?
I would doubt very much that he was seeking to be president just because his father was president. It's been normal in other parts of the world as well that people who hail from families that have produced leaders at that level before have sought also to have a go at it, and I think it's a very normal and natural human happening. If your father was a coconut farmer, you are likely to try to be a coconut farmer. If he was running a bakery, you are likely to try to run a bakery, and if he was a football player, there's every likelihood that some people from the family would go that way. I do not think that they do that because they think that they have any special entitlement to that which they then aspire.
Uhuru Kenyatta did not decide to be the son of Jomo Kenyatta, and he's entitled to contest for the presidency. The bottom line is Kenyans are the ones to decide who becomes their next leader, and if Uhuru Kenyatta has offered himself and is elected to become the president of Kenya, we can't talk about the sense of entitlement because Kenyans will have elected him. So that issue of whether he's a sense of entitlement because his father was a president is neither here or there. The fact is he has the resources and he has a political constituency and is qualified to be the Kenyan president. It's up to Kenyans to decide whether they're going to elect him or not.
As Venezuelans prepare to vote in Sunday's presidential election following the death of President Hugo Chavez, we look back on his legacy through the lenses of a renowned Australian journalist and filmmaker John Pilger in this moving documentary entitled War on Democracy.
It was about the struggle of people to free themselves from a modern form of slavery. Richard Nixon, President of the United States, once said of Latin America, "People don't give a shit about the place. He was wrong. The grand design of the United States as a modern empire